Part 17. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 162. This is a chapter of nearly 4,000 words, please subscribe to the original version. In front of nature, Jia Yan feels that he is really too small. The sky and the earth are already changing color. The cloudless blue before has turned into dark clouds. And these dark clouds are not real dark clouds, but formed by those volcanic ash. Volcanic ash covered the sky, almost filling the entire sky. Bang! Bang bang bang! The crater that began to erupt seemed like a cannon that never stopped, constantly spraying magma and molten rock towards the outside world. Some of the jets are farther away, directly hitting where Jia Yan is. You know, the big mosquito flew wildly in one breath and reached a place 3 kilometers away from Mount Fuji with its downward momentum. But the volcanic lava is still ejected so far. Jia Yan quickly continued to fly backwards, as if this would make him feel a little bit safer. And some of the humans on the other side of Mount Fuji were directly hit and killed by the lava ejected from the volcano. Even many people who climbed Mount Fuji were burned alive by the magma. The screams kept coming. The scenery is miserable. Jia Yan, a big mosquito that had killed some human beings, felt a little miserable when he saw them. He silently said a few words for them in his heart, "Go well." After the volcano erupted without warning, it seemed as if it was about to completely release the repression that had not erupted for hundreds of years, with no intention of stopping. Bang bang bang. Continuing to explode. Jia Yan didn't care about this at all. He unfolded his body and was about to leave here. He was like a child who got into trouble. After causing danger, he patted his butt and walked away. Did the attack by those metal monsters just now cause the eruption of Mount Fuji? If so, then I'm really embarrassed. Because that would be equivalent to the volcanic eruption caused by me. Ahem, I was just careless. I believe those friendly and kind Japanese people who died will forgive me. Jia Yan felt a little guilty in his heart. But he doesn't regret anything. He didn't mean it. After thinking so much, Jia Yan calmed down for a moment, and then began to flap his wings rapidly. Yin yin yin. Yin yin yin. Whoops. The wings vibrate and the flight speed is maintained at a certain level. It just started gliding. Countless people below him were shouting crazily. Everyone seemed to be shocked by the sudden eruption of the sacred mountain Fuji, they called it. Jia Yan looked at the ordinary people of the Japanese country below. These people were running away one by one. Some cars also collided with each other while driving. Total chaos. Although Jia Yan didn't have a good impression of the Japanese, he saw such a huge momentum at this time. Moreover, it seemed that I had some contribution to this momentum, and I suddenly felt a little guilty. But so what if you feel sorry for yourself? Jia Yan has no ability to go back. Reseal the volcano. In short, just express your sorry and sympathies in your heart. During the flight, Jia Yan glanced back. With these two glances, his compound eyes almost went straight, and he almost hit a nearby tree. This Mount Fuji in Jia Yan's eyes. It's not just as simple as a volcanic eruption. It's just that the volcano erupted, and Jia Yan wouldn't find anything scary or strange. But this eruption is actually mixed with countless red lights. Swish, swish, swish. Just as he was looking behind him, two of the red lights were shooting in the direction of Jia Yan. Boom boom. Jia Yan only felt that the earth was shaking under his feet. Under his horrified gaze, two red rays of light hit a private house at his feet. This private house was originally a wooden house unique to the Japanese country. It was exquisite and small. Although it was not a very beautiful house, it was still very distinctive. Many people in China are envious of houses like the ones in Japan. But such a house seemed to be made of paper and exploded directly when shot by red light. Become fragments all over the sky. There are also pitiful screams of humans coming from the house. Jia Yan's compound eyes paused for a moment, and then all he saw was another fiery red light from behind, piercing the sky and shooting in his direction. Fortunately, Jia Yan quickly turned around during this period. Although the red light looks like light, it should actually be solid, so its speed is not as fast as real light, so Jia Yan saw it from a distance and immediately avoided it. Boom! A big tree in front of him was directly destroyed, and tree debris flew wildly into the sky. He was almost crying. How far is this? Almost 5 kilometers. If only Mount Fuji hadn't been relatively high, the view for 5 kilometers would have been blocked. But those metal monsters on the mountain were still sniping at him from so far away. How much hatred must be required to do this? Of course, this does not rule out that those monsters were just shooting randomly on the mountain, and one of them happened to hit Jia Yan. After all, if these monsters had such strong and accurate marksmanship, would they have been able to escape from the cave before? Also, aren't these monsters afraid of high temperatures? He was actually thrown into the erupting volcano and lava, sniping people. Jia Yan naturally doesn't know that those metal monsters are extremely heat resistant. Note that there is the word extremely here. Their level of temperature resistance may not even be imagined by Jia Yan. Just as Jia Yan flew away from here, the metal monsters who came to the outside of the volcano seemed to be furious. Each of them walked at a mechanical pace. Although their feet were occasionally soaked by the magma emerging from the volcano, their feet in the hot magma only jumped out of the spread of the magma. There is no burnt color at all. Some were simply washed down the mountain by the lava. Then, before the magma solidifies, he jumps out of it and continues to roam the surface world. Shoot at all the humans you see. Crazy. The world is really crazy. Just when the Japanese volcano erupted, and the metal monsters surged from the magma to the human world one by one, the media all over the world began to bombard the Japanese Mount Fuji. Of course, this is still only the initial stage of the eruption of Mount Fuji, and countless media have not yet had time to arrive at the scene. Conduct an interview. But the Japanese police and self-defense forces. But he already learned the news of the incident as soon as possible. What? Mount Fuji erupted? Along with the eruption, countless monsters emerged from the volcano? Are you kidding me? The rapid rescue team is ready to go at any time. All members of the self-defense force are ready and can go to the front line at any time. Regardless of monsters or whatever, we have the determination and confidence to kill them all. Several teams from Japan. The reaction speed is still good, which reflects that their usual training is also more effective. But the first ones to rush to the disaster area were actually not the Japanese rescue team, but those miserable police officers. The response speed of the Japanese police was really fast. But it shouldn't have been so fast. The reason for rushing to the disaster area so quickly was none other than being stimulated by that big mosquito today. As a result, police teams gathered everywhere and entered a state of tense preparation. There was also a group of people at the place where the big mosquito monster last disappeared. That is, in the area not far from Mount Fuji, search for the giant mosquito. It is for this reason. As a result, these people were used as gunmen again. Within an hour, he rushed to the scene and received unanimous praise and attention from high-level national officials and foreign media. The ordinary people of Japan are even more enthusiastic about these Japanese police who are patriotic and caring for the people. It's just that I didn't cry bitterly. I used to scold you all the time, we were wrong. Of course, these people don't know the real reason. If they knew that they were just going to catch big mosquitoes and happened to encounter an emergency, they would definitely be extremely disappointed, right? No one knows this, so let's continue to let these police officers become heroes and martyrs. Why do you say he is a martyr? The reason is too simple. Can they resist the metal monster that even Jia Yan had to run away desperately to escape with his life? Impossible. Therefore, these policemen who arrived first are destined to become good warriors of the people with dual attributes of heroes and martyrs. People are evacuating urgently. If this is just an ordinary volcanic eruption, maybe the Japanese country can rely on their advanced disaster relief experience and the people's good mentality to resist natural disasters. This Mount Fuji eruption may not cause greater harm. However, this volcanic eruption is not that simple at all. Don't forget, the things that were ejected along with the magma, as well as those metal monsters. When these monsters were first captured on camera and began to spread through television media and even the internet, the world is in shock again. There was even a picture taken by ordinary people on the internet. This picture probably shows this person driving with his family in the opposite direction of the volcano. The photographer originally wanted to capture the disaster scene when the volcano erupted. Outside the camera, there were family members crying and the photographer himself sobbing. I finally bought a house near a famous scenic spot, Mount Fuji, but it was about to be destroyed by a volcanic eruption not long after I lived there. This would make anyone want to cry. But in the middle of filming this ordinary video, a red light suddenly appeared in the camera lens. This light shot hit the electric pole near the vehicle. Boom boom. A person hugged a thick wire pole and was bombarded by red light, roaring, and then fell down. Oh my God, the camera's family members screamed. Then the photographer himself began to shake the camera he was holding. As the camera turned, I saw on the road behind the camera, some kind of four-legged metal machine that looked like a large dog, suddenly chasing their car at an extremely fast speed, approaching at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, on the top of the metal monster's head, there was a red light that shot out from the metal tube. Boom boom. Another huge gap appeared in the road near the vehicle. It looks like a big crater where a meteorite fell. After that, the video shooting angle quickly shook and then stopped. This video was uploaded to the internet by an unknown user, and then it started spreading like crazy. Although there have been many large monster sightings and related articles in the world, this is the first video that captures the scene from a first-person perspective and provides the entire scene to the audience. What happened to the photographer? Is his family still safe? Countless people have left messages on the internet, but there are still only a few messages that care about the life and safety of the photographer. More people are horrified. Is there really a monster going to attack us humans? What's going on in the Earth world recently? Monsters are appearing in waves. What big thing is going to happen? The Japanese army should be able to take care of those monsters, right? If not, should our Chinese army send out to help them kill these monsters? Of course, whether they can leave after killing them depends on their sincerity, ha ha ha. SB upstairs, even if they want to invite, they are asking their father of the Star-Spangled Banner to come forward. How can it be our turn to come to China? Besides, don't we also have those 3 huge monsters in China? They will jump out and attack anytime. Human beings, it will be our turn to be in danger. That's SB upstairs. It would be better if all the Japanese people die. The Chinese people don't need outside help. Come 3 and kill 3, come and kill 100. Kill, kill, kill. China's internet is also abuzz. Among them, some people also mention the big mosquito that spans China and Japan. However, this big mosquito monster has long been covered up by so many metal monsters on Mount Fuji in Japan, and has no longer any brilliance. Someone mentioned it? But after receiving no response, the person who posted the message gave up. But these ordinary people speaking on the internet are thinking that the world is really going to be in some kind of crisis. But they still regard such things as a kind of after-dinner conversation. No one thought that these monsters, giant mosquitoes, and disasters would happen around them. However, things are evolving. Step by step, the curtain will be opened for the next huge event to unfold. This volume is finished. In the next volume, the big mosquito will grow further, and the plot will further move towards a passionate climax. I hope everyone can subscribe to the original version and support it, thank you. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 163. New volume, please subscribe and vote monthly. Less than 10 minutes after Mount Fuji caused a huge disaster. Not far from the active volcano Mount Fuji, there is an ancient Japanese longhouse-style building. This building is not really as old as it looks on the outside. Inside it is simply some sophisticated instruments and many top scientific research talents. These people are busy, dedicating their talents and sweat in this place, in exchange for knowing more about the mysterious Japanese gods, and then allowing the Japanese country to develop great technology faster. Everything here is still so stable. If no accidents happen, these researchers will stay here all their lives, engaged in research work. In the end, they will die of old age before they can see this small island of Japan becoming the world's top power. Past. But today, their fate will be changed, and the existence that changes their fate is the big mosquito they saw on TV, who originally thought they would never have anything to do with them. That's right, that big mosquito detonated Mount Fuji, and its impact was far beyond what you see in front of you. Look, Mount Fuji has erupted. In the research institute, a researcher who was resting in the corridor suddenly saw that there was a hint of darkness in the air that was originally very clear to him. When he looked around, but I saw a horrifying scene. On the top of Mount Fuji, magma spewed and actually exploded. At this time, the entire institute was in chaos. Phone calls were constantly being made to the outside world, and there were also many contacts from the outside world. But just when these people are still in a state of confusion and think that the eruption of Mount Fuji volcano will not threaten their side for the time being, the so-called divine object of the Japanese country suddenly changed. If someone has clairvoyance, they will see the metal pipes that should be very tight in the cave that has completely collapsed deep underground in Mount Fuji. At this time, there was a gap. The magma that surged up from below was now poured into the gap in the pipe. This magma passes through the pipes and spreads upward very quickly. Then, we arrived at the core of the research institute 300 meters underground in the country of Japan. That is, the god object of the Japanese kingdom, where is the object similar to the mysterious machine in the underground world of the Chinese kingdom. Just 10 minutes after Mount Fuji erupted, this underground research institute's god object had a violent reaction. Boom boom boom. It's shaking. Oh my god, what's going on? 5 top scientific researchers from Japan were studying what happened to the divine objects. At this time, everyone screamed in horror. The entire underground research institute is in chaos. Without waiting for these panicked top scientists to come up with countermeasures. Poof. The god object they relied on for research suddenly made a crisp sound. Gurgling gurgling. Something hot and dazzling. Suddenly, from the feet of the divine object machine with pipes, slowly overflowed. What is this? Not good. Leave quickly. The researchers at the Underground Research Institute were stunned when they saw this scene. Then one by one they came to their senses, almost all of them had their scalps exploded. You have to run for your life subconsciously. I can't walk, there are so many research results, which are my hard work for more than 20 years. I can't walk. 5 top scientific researchers. Looking at the slowly filling magma, the blazing temperature burned the entire ground to brown, and some of the instruments that came into contact made crackling sounds. But that mysterious god was immersed in these extremely high temperature magma and did not appear to be burned at all. Quickly. That's a high pressure reactor there, it's about to explode. Just when the 5 people looked at each other with great reluctance, a researcher rushed over. But it's too late. A high-pressure reactor very close to the so-called sacred object of Japan was completely immersed in magma. Then, it shines brightly. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions occurred 300 meters deep underground that no one knew about. There are too many high-tech equipment in the Underground Research Institute, many of which are high-pressure reactions, and even some machines that test explosive properties. When it explodes, the power and ferocity are beyond the imagination of ordinary people. People on the ground seem to have experienced an earthquake. Could it be that after the volcano erupted, another earthquake came? Countless people approaching the Longhouse Research Institute had this idea in their minds. But this time the explosion only lasted for a short period of time and then ended. The shaking on the ground only lasted for a short moment and then ended. This made those who were worried about another earthquake suddenly feel relieved. But what they didn't know was that this explosion buried 5 of Japan's most prestigious top scientific researchers underground forever. If it can be exchanged, the senior officials of the Japanese country are absolutely willing to exchange the lives of 1,000 ordinary people on the ground for the lives of 5 top scientific researchers. But, this is impossible. If this explosion was indirectly caused by the big mosquito, then his behavior this time would definitely make the Chinese people applaud. Not to mention anything else, the death of these 5 top scientific researchers in Japan alone can set back the entire Japanese scientific community by more than 10 years. What Jia Yan did was so beautiful. Of course, all this was just Jia Yan's unintentional act, not to mention that now that he is no longer even a human being, how can he still have the concept of a country? Anyway, if you are tricked by yourself, the most you can do is say sorry. If you are not tricked, then you are lucky. He is still flying. Half an hour was enough for him to fly out of Mount Fuji and into a county far away from the disaster. This is also because Jia Yan maintains a low-altitude flight in order to avoid radar surveillance. Otherwise, he would definitely be able to fly farther at full speed. It was already daytime, and it was still the peak time for work in the early morning. No matter how the big mosquito hid his body, his true face was still seen by many witnesses. One after another, witness reports were passed to the police and the Information Intelligence Agency of the Self-Defense Forces. The reports were very sad. Some said that their daughter, who was in kindergarten, was so frightened that she cried when she saw the big mosquitoes and couldn't even eat breakfast. Some said that when their little yellow saw the big mosquito, he barked at the sky. Simply cannot stop. Others drive. Seeing the big mosquito, the car drove directly into the smelly ditch and asked the police if the big mosquito should be fully responsible in this situation. Anyway, a lot of people are giving feedback. But after receiving the intelligence, the police and self-defense forces have no time to deal with the giant mosquito monster. Just about Mount Fuji. It makes them very anxious. This big mosquito doesn't seem to be attacking ordinary people yet, so just let it be. As a result, Jia Yan was flying in the air, thinking that there must be something like a plane. I came here to farewell myself, but to my surprise, no plane showed up at all. This made him want to wait for something like a fighter plane to come over. The idea of hiding directly in a deep mountain or densely populated area has no chance to be implemented. Of course, being able to avoid fighting dangerous military aircraft is the best thing. It can be said that Jia Yan is really afraid of human fighter jets, after the fierce battle with the Daewon fighter jet. Although he seemed to have won by luck, the reality was not that at all. If someone pays more attention to it, give him 2 bombs or something. Maybe Jia Yan will be in trouble. Yin yin yin. The giant mosquito spreads its wings and soars. It would be better if there were no fighter planes now. Jia Yan thought about it and roughly thought of what the Japanese meant. There are so many people waiting for rescue on Mount Fuji, and the Japanese police and self-defense forces have to deal with the metal monsters emerging from the ground. I guess they don't have time to deal with this big mosquito. In this case, why should I fly so low? It can be faster if I fly higher. Leave Japan as soon as possible. Thinking of this, the big mosquito expanded directly. Groan. A huge noise sounded, and people below looked up one by one. They saw a giant mosquito with a wingspan of about 2 meters, like a dragon swimming out of the sea, soaring for 9 days. After the giant mosquito made a huge noise, it directly twisted the muscles of its wings. The huge noise caused by flying suddenly turned into a silent gliding, as if the clouds were calm and the wind was gentle. But this sound has attracted more attention. I don't know how many children below were made cry, and how many people were hurt because they looked at him and bumped into trees. Anyway, Jia Yan didn't care so much. He was already flying extremely fast and arrived at the coast. That's right. Jia Yan changed his flight route this time. After all, it was daytime, so he decided to fly to the ocean first, then leave the coastline. After grabbing his notebook and other things, he quickly flew away from the border of Japan. With so many things happening in the Japanese country, Jia Yan felt that as a guest, he was no longer welcome by his master, so it would be more sensible to run away quickly. At the end of the horizon in front of the compound eye, the shadow of the ocean appears. The blue water was very similar to the blue colors in his body now. Jia Yan is now flying at an altitude of 1,000 meters. Although after the battle on Mount Fuji, he feels that he can continue to fly even at about 2,000 meters, but the optimal flying height is naturally around 1,000 meters. Human beings as small as ants are walking underfoot, and houses are like building blocks, standing in the ground. Those tiny roads are like ropes, leading from one end of the earth to the other. People drive cars or walk on these roads. The fields are spread out in patches, and the forests are a mixture of green and autumnal yellow. The underground scenery is different every time you fly over. This Japanese island has not been developed to a great extent. The green mountains and forests in many places are well maintained, so the scenery is spotless and very eye-catching. Seeing the vast natural scenery, I feel a little calmer. If there is no fighting and killing, just flying in such a world, it will feel very good. Unfortunately, the peace Jia Yan wanted could not come. How? Just when he finally reached the blue coastline. At the far end of the sky, with a roar that resounded across the sky, 2 Japanese Air Self-Defense Force main combat aircraft, F-15J, pierced the sky. Then, towards the direction of Jia Yan, lightning came flying in. Fighter, when Jia Yan saw this scene, he suddenly exclaimed, "Oops." The Japanese country actually sent fighter planes to deal with him at this time of national crisis. It was simply crazy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 164. The big mosquito's compound eyes are faintly watching the supersonic fighter jet flying in the distance. When we arrive at the sky above the seaside of Yamanashi Prefecture, the giant mosquito monster is right in front. Shooting him down is trivial. Over. On the 2 F-15J/DJ fighter jets, as the pilot of the front aircraft, there is a man about 30 years old. This man has a face with a Chinese character. If anyone from the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force sees this man, he will definitely be very angry. I was so surprised. This is another very powerful figure. He is none other than the legendary pilot currently in service in Japan, Komaki Izo. Komaki Izo is affiliated with the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force, Komatsu Air Base in the Central Defense Zone. It's real, please don't think it's made up. This defense area is a large defense area in central Japan, with a total of more than 100 aircraft, and there are 12 radars, 2 anti-aircraft missile groups, and 40 Patriot missile launchers. At this point, we have to mention what Jia Yan said before about the crazy Japanese army. Conflicts between the Japanese Navy, land, and air forces have existed since history. The most well-known thing is that during World War II, the Navy and the Army were almost on the same page, except for the fact that they did not directly engage in internal strife in the Japanese country. Under such circumstances, they were able to declare war with several established powers around the world, and even fought vigorously. I have to say that the Japanese people are quite good at fighting. The current situation is the same. The Japanese are still in a state of centrifugal force among the land, sea, and air forces. Now it is the Army Self-Defense Force that is rescuing Mount Fuji. Naturally, the Navy cannot intervene, and the Army has not received any rescue requests and tasks. So after receiving the report of the big Mosquito in the Central Defense Area and seeing his figure on the radar, the Komatsu Air Force Base immediately took action. Isn't this big Mosquito very powerful? Even the self-defense forces on the road suffered a loss at his hands. If Komatsu Air Force Base captured this giant mosquito, wouldn't it be a huge disgrace to the ground self-defense forces? This is what the senior officials at Komatsu Air Force Base think. Even after learning that this big mosquito had escaped with his life in the hands of a silent fighter and even injured the fighter, they also dispatched the Komatsu base with great caution, and the captain of the 303 Squadron was piloted by the leader member. That is to say, the first of the two F-15J/DJ fighters is the captain, and the other one is another second lieutenant in the 303 Squadron who has always performed extremely well in exercises. For the wingman, 2 aircraft form the minimum combat organization. Chasing the big mosquito, Jia Yan, on the other hand, was completely unpredicted. First of all, he did not expect that the Japanese Congress would attack him at such a sensitive period. Second, he did not expect that 2 fighter jets would attack him together this time. This basket is a burden. Should I take it with me or not? Jia Yan looked at the flying basket held in both hands. This basket is nothing, but it contains a lot of azure semi-liquid. He wanted to take him to a safe place. Do some research before deciding whether to smoke or not. Throw it away now. It seems to be a pity, so don't throw it away. But it affects combat effectiveness. His compound eyes looked at the semi-solid blue liquid in the basket. This liquid still looks like jelly. He looked like he was attracting Jia Yan to suck him as soon as possible. Jia Yan looked at this thing and felt furious. I have succeeded so many times before, so let's trust the animal instinct again this time. He thrust his mouthpart into the basket. The stylet at the front of the mouthparts. In fact, after this mutation, Jia Yan did not use it to continue fighting the enemy. Originally, such a key organ could not be used in fighting. Of course, this did not mean that Jia Yan's mouth needle had become weak. Quite the opposite actually. At this time, his mouth needle can be said to be as hard as iron. With one stab, it penetrated into this jelly-like thing. Huh. Jia Yankao inserted the needle and suddenly felt a very familiar feeling. This is a kind of alien feeling that seems to be blended with itself, as if this blue liquid should be part of my body. The sparkle in Jia Yan's eyes became even brighter. He didn't stop his instinct at the moment, and started sucking directly. Sizzle. Although the semi-liquid in the basket is semi-solid, it cannot be resisted by Jia Yan's suction organ that has undergone several mutations. As long as he is not solid, Jia Yan has a way to completely absorb them. Now the blue liquid in the basket became scarcer, visible to the naked eye. The more Jia Yan drank, the brighter the light in his eyes became. The speed of smoking is also getting faster and faster. The diameter of this basket is almost 30 centimeters, and it contains a lot of blue semi-solid. Jia Yan smoked it for about 10 seconds, but he completely sucked it all. At this time, the 2 fighter jets also flew into the range less than a kilometer away from Jia Yan with a roar that shook the sky. This is already a very close distance, and for a fighter jet that exceeds the speed of sound, it can even arrive in an instant. But Jia Yan still inserted his mouth needle into the basket, and fiercely sucked up the last drop of semi-solid blue liquid in the basket. G. The big mosquito sucked up all the blue liquid. Then the belly of this big mosquito swelled slightly. Jia Yan knew it at this moment. This time, he made the right bet again. After this azure liquid was absorbed into his body, Jia Yan could feel that it suddenly reacted with the azure crystal substance he had absorbed before. The big mosquito in mid-air seemed to have a faint blue glow in its body during the few short seconds it was in the air. But this brilliance was not enough for the pilot on the fighter plane to notice. Even Jia Yan himself, if he didn't pay attention, wouldn't have noticed that his dark self actually had a little more blue on his body. It was a battle at this time, but the pilots of the two fighter planes saw the big mosquito floating in the air, showing no signs of defense against the two advanced fighters approaching them quickly. Naturally, they won't be angry that the giant mosquito monster looks down on them. This is a monster. Who would be angry with a creature that is probably completely without intelligence? So at this time, Komaki Izo, who was the lead pilot, sent an attack signal to his comrades. Just open fire. The F-15J fighter jet is a combat aircraft with very obvious characteristics. Its strength lies in dogfighting and attacking enemy targets at close range. The F-15/DJ modified by the Japanese country has a very strong close combat system. It is equipped with the Stars and Stripes famous M61 Gatling cannon as an aerial cannon. In a close combat comparison with China's recent fourth-generation prototype fighter J-20, many aspects insist that it achieved an overwhelming victory. Of course at this point. To be discussed. And are these two mature fourth-generation human fighters going to start a close battle with the giant mosquito? A creature that is only 2 meters long, even if its wingspan is included, even with its feet spread out. The coverage range is no more than a small creature of about 4 meters. But they have to face two aircraft with a wingspan of 13 meters. It's a giant aircraft with a length of 19 meters. If nothing else, the weight difference is huge. But there are two fighter planes in the sky. But he still fired first. They don't close the distance. Because the precedent of the silent fighter is there, and it is impossible for them to repeat the same mistake. Boom boom boom. The powerful airborne cannon of the F-15J. Fire. Deafening sounds resounded in the air, tongues of fire. Like an overwhelming impact of life-threatening talismans, they shot out one after another. The big mosquito still stood there quietly. It seemed that he was frightened by the sudden appearance of these two huge fighter planes. The pilots on the two fighter planes all had happy faces. This big mosquito is so stupid, Daewon, your fighter plane was actually damaged by it. It seems that the strength of Daewon Air Force is nothing more than this. When you capture the fishing island in the future, you don't have to worry about too many things. Komaki Izo in the cockpit of the fighter plane thought so, and then he was waiting for the big mosquito in front of him to be torn apart by the huge power of the aircraft cannon. Boom! The first aerial cannon bullet hit the giant mosquito's body with great accuracy. The figure of the giant mosquito was bombarded from a distance in almost an instant. Compared with the combat power of the giant mosquito, his weight of only a few dozen kilograms was completely too light. He was hit by an aircraft cannon bullet and did not wait. When the second attack came, it was sent flying dozens of meters away in a parabolic pattern. At this moment, neither pilot saw the giant mosquito's body that had been hit by a bullet suddenly burst into azure light. "Captain, we killed him. Isn't it too hasty to let us come out together? This big mosquito is nothing to be afraid of." The two people on the fighter plane celebrated together, and the two F-15J fighter jets they drove also flew through this airspace due to inertia. Just when the two fighters were about to turn around to observe the results of the battle. Buzz buzz. A faint sound sounded slightly near the coastline. Buzz buzz. Ben was falling downwards. In the eyes of the two pilots, it was a giant mosquito monster that would definitely die without a burial place. At this time, it was covered in blue, with no trace of scars on its body, and it flapped its wings gently. There was a strange look in Jia Yanfu's eyes. He was not stunned just now, nor was he stunned by these two fighters. Instead, after sucking in so much blue liquid, he felt that something was connecting back and forth in his body. That's why there was no evasive action, waiting for the changes in the body to unfold. Jia Yan's last mutation was not only due to the black liquid, but also because he swallowed the blue crystal. And now this time, he drank so much blue liquid. The previous azure crystal gave his body that strange azure substance, which saved his life in several critical moments. After sucking the blue liquid into his body this time, Jia Yan had already thought about whether the two very similar substances might be related. But I didn't expect that these two things would be so connected, as if they were one and the same substance. The original order was to swallow the semi-solid azure liquid first and then fuse it with the azure crystal, which would have been smoother, but Jia Yan did the opposite. He first fused the most difficult azure crystal, and now it's the azure liquid. These two substances basically have complementary effects. Because he has fused the blue crystal first, Jia Yan now has already endured the pain of mutation, and his body has long been waiting for the blue liquid to start mutating. Now the blue liquid is in place. He will undergo a mutation without any pain in the entire process. In other words, he can definitely do it. While fighting, his body will develop new mutations again. Looking at the two Japanese fighter jets making a U-turn in the distance, the Mosquito's compound eyes with a touch of blue light were even more faintly shiny. "Come on," Jia Yan shouted coldly in his heart. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 165. The small basket he was holding had been thrown somewhere during the attack. This thing is actually a good thing. It is estimated that it can withstand a few bullets under the fire of aircraft cannons. If the Japanese people who pick it up treat it well, it may also be a magic weapon that can be used as a family heirloom. Of course, for Jia Yan, just throw this thing away. Anyway, the blue semi-solid in it has long been sucked into his body. Now, Jia Yan is undergoing mutation. You come to attack me. I happen to be thinking that this mutation will not make my body aggrieved. I will fuse with ordinary land and rocks. Isn't the fighter plane you sent me the best metal? This time I will you destroy it. Destroy at least one. It will be the nourishment for my mutation. Jia Yan looked at the two fighter planes in the distance, and the light in his compound eyes flickered slightly. The big mosquito has a faint blue color all over its body, as if the black is smudged with a little color of the sky. As for the figure flying in the air, some strange viscous liquid began to gradually overflow from the surface of the body. This is an indescribable feeling. It was the first time he felt mutation in such a sober state. Jia Yan immediately realized that his mutation was a very strange feeling. There is a desire in the body, a desire to devour. This kind of devouring can be anything, as long as it can add mass to the body. Of course, the so-called no pain is compared to the previous mutations. It is definitely impossible to not feel any strange feeling at all. Jia Yan slowly flew upward at low altitude, and during this period, two distant fighter planes also turned their noses in the air. What's going on? How come that big mosquito is still intact? It's really a monster. The two pilots almost stared at each other. Not only did they no longer laugh at the big mosquito for being unintelligent, but they also stopped laughing at the dull-looking fighter plane. Faced with a monster that can actually withstand aircraft bullets with its body, it is normal for a silent fighter to be accidentally damaged by the opponent. Of course, even this is the case. It is impossible for their two fighters to repeat the same mistakes. Because they are already mentally prepared. If you don't get close, you just attack. This giant mosquito monster can't match the speed of fighter planes, so what can it do to them? No matter how monster you are, your side will continue to attack. Could this monster still destroy them with its eyes? So the two F-15Js greeted each other on the radio this time. Then, roar forward. Jia Yan looked at the two fighter planes sprinting towards him in the distant sky at nearly the speed of sound. He knew very well what these two fighters wanted to do, and even more clearly what they relied on. Isn't it because he, Jia Yan, can't match the fighter's speed? Is this how you rush in without any scruples? Just right, my body is in the process of mutation. The energy is also huge. If you want to play, then play. The giant mosquito's compound eyes flashed with light. Then, he moved. The wings are stretched out. Make a violent sonic boom. The continuous explosions of fighter jets roared through the air, as well as the unique flapping sound of giant mosquitoes. People on the ground have already noticed it one by one. These Japanese people. Some people looked up strangely and immediately screamed. Only then did the remaining people realize that three objects flying in the sky, two large and one small, were fighting just a few hundred meters above their heads. With the roaring fighter planes overhead and the giant mosquitoes flying in the sky, it is not difficult for people to guess that their Japanese country actually intercepted the giant mosquito monster that caused trouble in the Japanese country the day before yesterday, and they are going to deal with it here. Zaya-jun. Look, it's in the sky. Use your mobile phone to take pictures quickly. Take pictures of such a huge scene quickly. It turns out that it is the giant mosquito mentioned on TV a few days ago. I didn't expect it to be so small. What are the fighter planes doing? Why are they flying around in this densely populated area? Hey, what is that in front of the fighter plane? Is it a bird? Below the sky, countless humans heard the sound and watched this wonderful battle in the sky. In the sky, Jia Yan had already thought of a way for the two fighter planes to deal with him. If these pilots think that because I am slower than them, there is nothing I can do against them, then they are totally wrong. Jia Yan is flying in the sky, his compound eyes are dim and his wings are flapping rapidly. Yin yin yin. Groan. The whistling sound of the giant mosquito's wings also became louder. His speed suddenly changed from extremely quiet to extremely dynamic. The speed of acceleration is almost much faster than that of a fighter plane. And this is what Jia Yan knows, his only advantage. That's the flexibility of shifting. You know, he is a real flying creature. Human fighter jets may be really fast, and no other creature in the world can compare. But when it comes to flexibility, they are too far apart. What's more, the current Jia Yan's speed is not very slow at all. But, extremely fast. Yin yin yin. The giant mosquito flew up, and the two fighter planes behind it suddenly launched an attack. Another row of aircraft cannon bullets came shooting at rapid speed. Jia Yan discovered that the two fighter planes did not dare to shoot at the ground, but instead tried their best to shoot bullets in the direction of the air and sea water. This is for sure. As the Japanese aviation army, how could they harm their own civilians? But just like that, under the roar of the aircraft cannons, the people below immediately screamed and even cried. After all, the threat of attacks from fighter jets was too great, and who knew whether these attacks would fall on them? Therefore, the Japanese people who became timid after the war directly changed from the state of just watching the show to crying. Escape in all directions. Hurry up. Those two fighter planes actually dare to fire weapons. Hurry up. Are they crazy? If bullets hit civilians below, can they bear this responsibility? Assholes. Countless people began to insult the fighter pilot above. This is what the Japanese people are like. After the war, many people in their country are a group of very extreme people. Whenever something happens to the government or state units, they will yell and curse. Sometimes even the head of state will be criticized by them. Pull down. Of course, the Japanese people are not the most unique and typical ones. The Daewon people are the weird ones in this regard, and they are criticized by various camps. Families will fight because of different camps. Of course, this topic is off topic here and will not be mentioned. The big mosquito in the sky cannot hear the scoldings of the Japanese people below, but at least it knows. The military of any country would not dare to point its guns at its own citizens. So his eyes immediately lit up. Although it has been proved by facts just now. Jia Yan is not afraid of the opponent's aircraft bullets at all, but those things will hurt if they hit him. What's more, it will also affect Jia Yan's mutation process. So Jia Yan spread his wings and flew back inland. All he had to do was restrain the two fighters. Especially not allowing them to launch the missiles they have mounted. Because at this time, he was not sure. If you are accidentally hit by a missile from the front, will you be injured? Yin yin yin. So after Jia Yan quickly changed direction and dodged several bullets fired at him from the aircraft cannon. A twist of the wings. Sudden change of direction. The giant mosquito originally flew towards the open sea. It was a direct turnaround and turned into flying back to the land. And he still picked up a town not far ahead and flew to it. The pilots on the two F-15Js were immediately dumbfounded. Is this mosquito intelligent? He flew to a place with more people. Could it be a strategy to deal with us? Damn it, we should have waited until he was further away from the city before attacking. We made a mistake. It turned out that before the two pilots took off, senior military officials had said that they would wait until the giant mosquito monster flew out of land before launching an attack. However, at that time, the giant mosquito had actually flown to the sea. Everyone thought that there is no way this mosquito is so intelligent and will return to land again, using the people below as human shields. But now the facts are before our eyes, the giant mosquito actually did this. An attack by two pilots will be more difficult to launch. Chase. We can't let him go. Two F-15J fighter jets were dispatched, so naturally they could not return empty-handed. The two pilots gritted their teeth and raised the nose of the plane, chasing Jia Yan. Boom boom boom. Three extremely fast flying things started chasing each other in the air. Jia Yan's speed at this time, because he was undergoing mutation, the inexplicable and strange blue power in his body exploded, and his sprinting flight actually increased in speed. 405. 407. 409. 500. 501. 503. 550. Grown. The flying speed of the giant mosquito exceeded the limit of 550 km per hour in an instant. Jia Yan felt that there was a force pulling him behind his body. His whole body was being pulled back by the strong wind, and even his tentacles were being pulled back with incredible force. This is inertial force. This is what is often called overload in flight terms. When the speed reaches a limit, the human pilot's overload endurance will exceed that limit. Even the most experienced pilot will always be a third-rate pilot if he is not strong enough to withstand overload. After all, a pilot with a high overload capacity can perform a high-altitude maneuver in an instant due to his physical fitness. Then the fighters will arrive behind your fighter. At that time, it is just a matter of pressing a button to aim and shoot at you. And if you can't make such a huge load action, you can only wait to be destroyed by others. And now the big mosquito, has he reached the limit of overload? What an international joke. Jia Yan is a mosquito that can withstand extremely powerful attacks head-on. The physique of his body is far beyond that of a human pilot. So, even at this ultra-high speed of 550 km per hour, Jia Yan was still reaching the sky above the town. The wings twisted hard. Jia Yan felt like he had hit a wall. Because of the twisting of the wings, the body quickly turned in mid-air. Fly upward. At this moment, Jia Yan even felt that his swinging body had exceeded the limit of his weight, as if he was 10 times heavier. The overloaded force that was suppressed instantly made even him feel a little uncomfortable. However, he is still far from reaching his limit. To be continued. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 166. Come to the genuine subscription, thank you. With this level of flexibility, this level of ultra-fast speed change, let alone the performance of human fighter jets, it is impossible to keep up. Even if they can keep up, the overload force at this moment can make any human pilot lose due to overload consciousness. Therefore, when the pilots of these two fighter planes saw the giant mosquito they had bitten to death suddenly turned upwards in front of them and disappeared before their eyes, they couldn't help but exclaimed. This level of flexibility has never been seen in any of their opponents during the exercise. The original flying speed of the giant mosquito actually reached 550 kilometers, and even the instantaneous acceleration may not even be comparable to that of a fighter jet. This has already made the two fighter pilots feel unbelievable. And now, this big mosquito can actually break through the limit that is almost impossible for living creatures to reach at such a high speed. It almost ignores the overload force in mid-air and makes a 180-degree turn upward. Oh my God! The F-15J pilot who was the wingman let out a startled shout. The psychological quality of pilots is strictly selected, but this person still screamed in surprise. Because the pilot discovered that the big mosquito that had just performed the extreme overload maneuver was rushing toward his fighter jet at a speed that was impossible for a fighter jet to react to. The body of the giant mosquito has a bright blue color, and the condensation gushes out very clearly, as if it has a crazy desire to devour everything in the world. Monster, this pilot is also a good player of the 303 Squadron. At this time, this person pushed the operating stick and forced the fighter's head to raise. This raise caused the fighter plane to quickly raise its head. As long as he avoids the attack of the big mosquito, he will find the angle to counterattack later. He will not believe that this big mosquito can continue to use such a powerful change of direction. What a strong overload it has to withstand. Fortunately, this person's reaction was quite fast, and a large mosquito crashed from high altitude in front of him. The forward route was barely avoided by this fighter plane that quickly raised its nose. Both sides in the sky, the earth, the sky, and the ocean. It's impossible to tell the difference between up, down, left and right with these things. The sudden high and low speeds, the sudden up and down flight, completely destroy the human balance organ. People who have not undergone strict training will vomit directly. Naturally, pilots who operate more fighter planes will not do this. However, if the movement is too violent, it may still cause functional impairment and cause certain reactions in the body. But this time the pilot was like this. His action of quickly pulling up the nose of the plane almost reached the limit of what he could normally endure. Damn it! It seems that I'm a little blind. The pilot felt a sudden blackness in front of his eyes, and his expression immediately changed. Visual blindness is a condition that more professional pilots are prone to suffer from, because when they fly the aircraft and almost reach their overload limit, their heads become congested. Pressure occurs on the retina of the eye, causing momentary damage to the eye's vision. Fortunately, the blindness happened as quickly as it came. The pilot who was almost hit by Jia Yan on the head finally pulled up the nose of the plane when there was a slight collision with Jia Yan's giant mosquito body. And just below the fighter plane, the big mosquito passing by had a slightly strange light in its compound eyes with a trace of blue light. He wouldn't mind if this collision happened. Just in time to feel how powerful my mutated body is. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. Jia Yan only needs to make the pilots of the two fighter planes feel scared. As long as the other side realizes that he, this big mosquito, may launch a suicidal impact on them at any time, then the two men will be in a pursuit battle with Jia Yan. When the time comes, a lot will be taken into consideration, resulting in poor performance of combat strength. When it comes to aerial combat, How can you pilots who think you are strong in the air compare to us, born flying creatures? Jia Yan's compound eyes are even more fierce. He seems to want to rectify the names of the vast number of flying creatures who have lost their air superiority. Swish, swish, swish. The giant Mosquito and the fast-flying fighter jet passed by each other in an instant, almost colliding with each other. The three of them rolled and flew high. 1,500 meters. 1,800 meters. 2,000 meters. This is the most uncomfortable cold place Jia Yan has ever experienced. But the big Mosquito that is currently mutating has no hint of coldness at all. Fly, fly, fly. The excitement in Jia Yan's eyes became even more obvious. This is flying, there is no need to worry too much, being able to let go of flying will definitely make him feel refreshed. 2,000 meters is nothing. Keep going up. Yin yin yin. After a near collision with a fighter jet at close range, Jia Yan is pestering this fighter jet. Climb upward. The sharp front feet struck directly on the outer shell of the fighter jet, slashing hard. Clang. The F-15J has excellent melee performance and its armor is also extremely powerful. However, Jia Yan's stab at close range actually caused a deep scar. Captain Komaka. Get away from him quickly. Near this fighter plane, another fighter plane serving as a wingman panicked. When he saw that the leader plane was damaged, he immediately came close to rescue the leader plane. Groan. At this time, the big Mosquito seemed to be a ghostly elf, deftly making a 360-degree turn in the air. What an overload! What gravity! Die all! I am the real king of the sky. At this moment, Jia Yan's pride soared. And this 360-degree turn allowed him to get away from the F-15J fighter that he stabbed, almost like a ghost, and came to the back of another F-15J fighter that wanted to come to rescue. What? The pilot of the wingman really lost the figure of the big Mosquito in his eyes for an instant. It was not until the radar showed that a small thing appeared only about 1 meter away from the tail of his fighter plane that he thought in horror. Turn the fuselage around. But if Jia Yan catches him, is there still a chance to escape? Impossible. At this moment, Jia Yan had no scruples at all and stretched out his right front foot, which was extremely terrifying in the eyes of the two pilots. Accelerate. As a veteran pilot, the wingman pilot directly controls the forward flying speed of the fighter jet. Instantly boosted to the limit. The moment of acceleration, the feeling of rushing forward is extremely strong. The body of the fighter jet actually managed to dodge Jia Yan's inevitable blow at the critical moment. That's great. With speed, you think you can defeat me? Jia Yan was in the air, his body almost flying at its ultimate speed. But this is still far behind two human fourth-generation fighters. This represents the culmination of several generations of human science and technology, and it is not a speed that can be surpassed easily. But has Jia Yan's speed reached its limit? No. He feels like he can still improve. The power of mutation should be far from this level. The azure crystal produced by the mysterious machine. Even the Japanese people are flocking to the azure crystal. Is it something of this level? The azure crystal has not chemically mutated with my body. It can rely on the azure substance to allow my body to launch that kind of extremely powerful defense. Now that it has mutated, could it be just such a simple thing? No. It's far more than that. I still have endless potential that I haven't tapped yet. The azure crystals and azure liquid have even more endless potential. Jia Yan felt as if his wings could no longer flap. But he still forced himself to have a pair of wings and flap them hard. Far from the limit. Even if your wings are broken, you must improve again. Yin yin yin. Yin 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 yin. Yin, whistle, whistle, whistle. Howl. Finally, the crazy sound of flapping wings was heard by Jia Yan. There has been a change. The dark wing muscle structure now shows a faint blue color. Its pulling power is gradually breaking through its original limits. The body's respiratory organs gradually changed in order to adapt to high-intensity fighting and exercise. The simple lungs are slowly mutating among all the internal organs. His color is changing towards azure. Not only these organs, but all the organs in Jia Yan's body are gradually changing into blue at this time. It's just because there is no external nutrient to swallow it up, these organs are temporarily unable to obtain material and undergo changes to enlarge. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, Jia Yan felt that not only the sound of flapping his wings had changed. He just felt. My body felt tense instantly. The power of the instant push is too great. His body seemed to be dozens of times heavier. Everything around me seems to have turned into lines. What a feeling it is. So fast. So refreshing. Jia Yan knew that his flight had once again entered a new world. High speed. It's really fast. The fighter jet that was quickly escaping from him was actually not getting farther and farther away. Instead, he was quickly approached by himself. How fast must it be to be as fast as it is now? What a brutal speed. Jia Yan was almost crazy with joy. How fast? Have no idea. Really do not know. Crazy, Jia Yan just felt like he was going crazy with joy. This is flying. This is enjoyment. Whistle, roar, roar. The giant mosquito's wings make a whirring sound that is not much different from the sound of a fighter jet flying. He is chasing behind the fighter plane. Bite tightly. Captain Komaki. Why did this mosquito suddenly become so much faster? The speed has exceeded 600 kilometers per hour. Damn it, it has exceeded 700 kilometers per hour. It's still rising. What the hell is going on? The pilot, who was driving the wingman and was being followed by Jia Yan, was unable to get away. At this time, his face was full of ugly colors. In order to fight the giant mosquito, their two fighter planes did not reach their maximum speed before. Now to increase the speed, there must be a process of speeding up. But this giant mosquito actually accelerated faster than them. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 167. This way, before he could increase his speed, he would be chased by that terrifying giant mosquito. At such a high speed, their two fighter planes couldn't launch an attack at all. At this time, the three chasing each other had completely succeeded in Jia Yan's calculation and flew deep into the interior of the Japanese country. Chasing at high altitude here is already very dangerous. If you want to open fire, there is a great possibility of hitting a house below. You bastard, you can't attack, you can only run away. What on earth are we here for? The pilot of this wingman couldn't help but curse secretly. Nothing is according to their script. Their original idea was to drive this big mosquito away from the coastline, then start a battle with it in the depths of the sea, and finally eliminate it. But who would have thought that this big mosquito might not really have intelligence, but it would actually attract them back to the land of Wagyu Island. This simply sealed all their weapons. And what's even more terrifying is, the aerial combat capabilities of this big mosquito far exceeded everyone's expectations. What speed is this? It has reached a speed of 850 kilometers per hour. This is not a mosquito, it is a jet fighter. His wings are jet engines, right? The lead pilot flying in front of the two, the leader of the 303rd Squadron of Komatsu Air Base, Komaki Izo, roared crazily. Is this a mosquito? Who dares to say it's a mosquito? I'll dig out his eyes to take a closer look. This is a mosquito that can be killed with just one slap. Go to hell. Where are the mosquitoes? It is simply a super flying monster. He was actually alone in a fight with two of humanity's most advanced fighter jets, and even a flying monster that had the upper hand was nothing like that weak blood-sucking Mosquito. How similar. Komaki Izo almost went crazy. He wanted to go crazy, and the wingman pilot who was behind him was bitten hard by the big Mosquito monster, and he felt like he was going to collapse. The wingman pilot felt that all the knowledge he had learned before had been overturned, and his understanding of the entire world should no longer be something that could be explained by the previous knowledge. Generations of fighter jets are the products of countless human scientific research efforts. Fourth-generation fighters like the F-15J. It was based on countless previous generation fighters and underwent countless actual combat simulations and drills before it was finally finalized and finally produced. It's okay to be defeated by the same scientific creation. This is a Mosquito. No matter how virtuous or capable it is, mankind has spent countless energy and financial resources. The fighter plane that was finally built and is proud of the sky, how can it be compared like this? Just rely on those crazy flapping wings. Monster. The wingman fighter almost collapsed. And that's it now. One front foot, a slight hook. The sound was so thin that even the pilot on the fighter plane didn't hear the slightest sound. Jia Yan didn't make any sound or vibration, and hooked one of his front feet slightly. Grab the tail fin of that fighter plane. In an instant, he finally chased behind the fighter plane. Climbed onto the fuselage of this wingman. The scary big Mosquito has a faint luster in its compound eyes. His front feet made contact with the fighter plane, and the 5 long legs behind him also grabbed onto the outer shell of the fighter plane. Click. Click, click, click. Jia Yan is this big Mosquito. He actually completely climbed onto the surface of this wingman fighter plane. What a risk, I almost got thrown off. Jia Yan felt that after he climbed onto the fighter plane was still accelerating violently, but he had already climbed onto the opponent's body. As long as he held on tightly, he would not be able to get rid of the opponent no matter how fast he accelerated. Don't lose yourself. In fact, Jia Yan's flight speed has just accelerated to the limit, the real limit. That's about 850 to 900 kilometers, which is already double his previous speed. No matter how fast he is, Jia Yan can't fly that fast at all. Fortunately, he can accelerate instantly in a short period of time. In this regard, he is faster than a fighter jet. In other words, his short-term explosive power is faster than a fighter jet. Only the subsequent acceleration is essentially different from these fourth-generation fighters. After all, everyone can accelerate to the speed of sound or even faster, but Jia Yan can't break the speed of sound at all. Maybe after he fuses some materials and completes this mutation, he can try it. It is absolutely impossible now. To reach the speed of 850 km per hour just now, he still had to chase behind the fighter jet. The fighter in front created a windless zone for him to a certain extent, allowing him to fly at a speed of more than 800 km per hour. That's really not easy. Anyway, Jia Yan climbed onto the F-15J wingman. Tsushi. Be careful. Komaki Izo, who was flying another fighter plane opposite this fighter plane, saw this scene with his teeth bared. This big Mosquito monster actually caught up with his comrades in an instant, and is now crawling on the outer shell of the fighter plane. Komaki Izo naturally shouted loudly. But, it's too late. Jia Yan's gaze became even deeper. As soon as his body touched the fighter plane, a lot of solution began to flow out from his body. The solution rolled down, and then the material followed the special structure of the solution, melting the surface of the fighter plane, taking away the material, and absorbing it back into Jia Yan's body. Absorbed? But now is not the time for me to absorb it, but to shoot it down first. Jia Yan looked at the condensation that absorbed the outer shell of the fighter plane, shook his head, and lifted his long legs under the horrified gaze of Izo Komaki on the other fighter plane. Compared to the last time he fought with the dumb fighter, Jia Yan is now in the process of mutation, and the azure-colored knife-shaped horns on his front feet have become substantially sharper than he was then. So this time, after he lifted up a pair of front feet, he cut them off directly with confidence. That's right, it's done with chopping. Jia Yan believed in the sharpness of his horny knife, so he didn't hesitate to use it. If you cut it with one strike, it will cause terrible damage. Zzz. The front foot fell down and came into contact with the hard armor of the F-15J. This armor is made with the most advanced technology in the human world, but can it compare with that metal pipe? Cannot. So he could only get one end. It was like a piece of paper being chopped open by Jia Yan's front foot. With one slash, under the gaze of Komaki Izo from the opposite side, this slash actually broke the wingman's shell. The contact surface between the front end of the knife-shaped horn and the fighter armor was instantly cut open, and then the knife-shaped horn seemed to have no obstruction. Just scratch it and there will be a long scar. Hisashi. Hurry up and fly the fighter plane to the sea. Then jump out of the plane. It's still too late. Hurry, Komaki Izo quickly gave orders to the wingman pilot through the communicator. He saw it, this big mosquito monster. He actually has the ability to destroy their fighter planes. Okay. When the wingman pilot Jia Yan cut his front foot into the fuselage, he also noticed that his fighter plane might be damaged by the opponent. So I was really panicking at this point. 2 fighters, please report the current battle situation. What happened to that big mosquito? There was a voice from the command center. This is the special liaison between the 2 fighter jets for this battle. She is a very beautiful girl. It turns out that the wingman pilot has been secretly in love with this girl for a long time, and even told Izo Komaki that he would kill the big mosquito in this battle. Then take the results with you and confess your love to this goddess. But the current wingman pilot has no intention of talking to his goddess. Just driving the fighter plane, listening to the big mosquito destroying the fuselage one by one. Quickly turn the fighter plane around and fly towards the ocean. There are no residential buildings on the ocean, so at least no casualties will be caused when the fighter plane crashes. Boom boom. At the critical moment when neither pilot had time to reply, Jia Yan's eyes lit up even more. He stood above the twin engines of the fighter plane, and the tail fin beside him had been cut off by his front feet, causing great injuries. The fighter plane began to shake. When the fighter plane was flying at high speed, any slight damage would cause great harm, not to mention that Jia Yan had cut several huge gaps in the wingman's tail. Jia Yan stood at the tail of the high-speed flying fighter plane. The hurricane here was really terrifying. The strong flying air oppressed him at all. Jia Yan needed to use up almost all his strength to make his middle and rear feet match. Grasp the body of the fighter plane firmly. The free pair of front legs launched a direct attack on the fighter plane. Now he finally found a better target to attack. That's the fighter engine under your feet. This is the lifeline of a fighter plane. If there is an engine problem, it will not be as simple as a shaking of the fuselage. Thinking of this, Jia Yan raised his slender legs. No. This big mosquito is going to attack your engine. Hurry. Takashi, eject and parachute quickly. Komaki Izo's lead aircraft has been flying next to the wingman, and he has been watching the movements of the giant mosquito. Because the giant mosquito stepped on the flight of his comrades, he could not launch an attack, but this did not prevent him from describing the situation he saw to comrades. What? The wingman pilot was shocked when he heard that the mosquito was about to attack the engine. He had no doubt that the attack power of this big mosquito could destroy the engine of the fighter plane. The big mosquito was startled and used its front feet to destroy the tail of the fighter plane to a great extent. If he wanted to attack the engine now, he might not be able to do it. It's really possible to cause engine problems with one hit. If a fighter jet engine breaks down, there is only one outcome: crash. Thinking of this, the wingman pilot's finger is to press a certain switch on the fighter plane's control button. But if you want to escape at this time, it's too late to. In the cockpit of the lead plane, Izo Komaki saw the big Mosquito on his comrade's plane. He raised his forefoot and stabbed it directly at a speed that was almost invisible to the naked eye. His target is the F-15J fighter engine that is constantly spraying flames under his feet. Poof! A pair of front legs stabbed at the engine on one side. Aren't you very advanced, using twin engines? Then I will destroy both of them together. Let's see if you die. Boom boom. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 168. I saw Jia Yan using his front foot to pierce the armor above the two pairs of engines of the fighter jet with maximum force. This expensive F-15J fighter jet finally shines with dazzling glory. Just where Jia Yan's front foot penetrated, sparks first flew from these two parts, and then the two engines themselves finally emitted blazing fire. Jia Yan was prepared long before the thrust. After piercing the engine, the four legs on the fighter plane completely left the surface of the fighter plane. His compound eyes reflected the bright flames in front of him. The flames pierced the fighter plane from his front feet and exploded directly. Immediately afterwards, the world in front of him completely turned into a world of fire. Boom! This fighter plane made a loud noise in the sky. The entire rear engine completely exploded. Fortunately, only the tail engine exploded. The explosion did not involve the fuel tank, at least it was not a brilliant full machine explosion. But maybe some people still hope that this kind of explosion will be better if the whole machine explodes. Because in that case, at least the fighter plane would explode in the air and not crash into the ground due to loss of engine propulsion. At this time, the height of this F-15J fighter jet was very low due to Jia Yan's previous action of destroying the tail. It is less than 300 meters from the ground. A distance of 300 meters. For an aircraft operating at close to the speed of sound, this distance can be reached in about 1 second. At the last moment when the fighter plane's engine exploded, the fighter plane barely raised its nose a little, and it seemed that the pilot in the plane was still reluctantly controlling his favorite plane, trying to fly up. But without the engine as power, all this would be impossible. But just this momentary move to control the fighter plane caused the pilot inside to lose his last chance to escape. This F-15J fighter is like a dead bird. He fell headlong downwards. And this area below. It is actually a very prosperous small town commercial street. And this huge dead bird came down with the light of fire. The townspeople in the small town who had been watching the battle in the sky screamed in horror. Run away in all directions. But such an escape. Where to escape? There is no place to escape. Boom. The fighter plane finally bombarded the main street of the town like a burning bomb. The super speed brought it huge destructive power. This kind of flying speed close to the speed of sound will fall down, and any part of the entire fighter plane will fall. Any fragment will kill all life like a bullet. And just before the fighter plane crashed, the giant mosquito had already released its 6 legs and jumped from the fighter plane. The body flies. Boom boom boom. The fire below was soaring into the sky, reflecting the huge mosquito flying up, making it look like a big mosquito. Like a demon flying out of the abyss. Extremely scary. Takashi. Damn it. Bastard. I watched helplessly as my comrades flew fighter planes and fell into the area where Japanese people lived. Now Komaki Izo, who was piloting the lead plane, became angry almost instantly. This collision not only means that his good friend will die, but also means that he will become a sinner in history, because the collision of the fighter plane will definitely cause many casualties. His friend will bear the name of a sinner after his death. Komaki Izo launched an attack on the big mosquito flying in the air almost instantly. Shoot out the cannon one after another. But the big Mosquito has already been flying in the air at variable speeds, and is tumbling in the air as if ignoring the overload force. His movements are so smooth. Compared with the previous few minutes, his speed has improved again, and his movements have instantly become more flexible. The muscles that beat the wings have been further strengthened, which is enough to support the giant Mosquito in making incredible patterns in the air. Twist and turn. The aircraft cannon bullets attack the giant mosquitoes at close range. However, none of them can hit the big Mosquito. After Jia Yan's speed increased, avoiding bullets became easier. And under such entanglement, the two sides finally came to the battlefield that the fighter planes were looking forward to, the ocean. Go to hell. Seeing the sea water under his feet and the endless ocean in front of him, Komaki Izo, who was relying on his super flying skills to confront the giant Mosquito, directly pressed a red button. Jia Yan was surprised to see the two long round objects mounted under the F-15J fighter jet that were very close to him suddenly burst into flames and shot out violently. Missile, Jia Yan was shocked. After fighting for so long, this fighter finally revealed its most powerful weapon. There is sea water below. This launch of air-to-air missiles is definitely not a bad choice. If it cannot hit the big Mosquito, at least it will not cause damage to civilian houses. Jia Yan was very calm in his heart. At this moment, when he saw the fire that was as long as his own body, rushing towards him with an indomitable momentum, he relaxed slightly. If you are too nervous, it will be counterproductive. Jia Yan is hypnotizing himself. Don't be nervous. This air-to-air missile doesn't look very fast now. My speed is definitely not something I can't avoid. What's more, even if I can't avoid it, it won't necessarily kill me. I have that kind of blue defense on my body. This kind of defense can even defend against the red rays of the metal monsters in the pipes. Human missiles, although it is powerful, it is not necessarily fatal to me, and it may not be as powerful as the red light. Thinking of these, Jia Yan's heart calmed down a little. Then, his wings flapped rapidly. The missiles chasing from behind are so fast. It exceeds the speed of sound in an instant. Naturally, Jia Yan's speed cannot be compared with that of his opponent. But his advantage is that he is extremely flexible, and his extremely fast flapping wings are not comparable to those weapons that spray flames when fighting in the air. There's just one thing about air-to-air missiles that makes Jia Yan extremely afraid, that is, these missiles are fully automatic. In other words, you can capture his figure and automatically track and attack. Jia Yan reacted the moment the missile was launched. He quickly made a dodge movement in the air. The missile scraped the air around Jia Yan and flew quickly. Jia Yan's body went directly to the sky, rising at a 90-degree right angle. The fighter planes in the rear also directly raised their noses. As for the air-to-air missiles, after turning an angle, they also pursued him. Although Jia Yan didn't know the specific model and data of this missile, he knew that they were not that high-tech and seemed to have limited attack angles. Then there seems to be fuel restrictions and so on. In particular, some air-to-air missiles may have defects such as losing their target due to interference. But Jia Yan is not an aircraft that can emit anti-interference radio waves. He's just a big Mosquito. At the moment, we can only use the most primitive method. Instead of launching a new chase, Jia Yan's advantage is flexibility. He won't forget this. Jia Yan kept making moves in the air that would shock all pilots in the world today. Rotate 360 degrees and change direction at super speed. Dive, pull up, turn, impact. Make various actions. Even Komaki Izo's fighter plane was thrown 2 or 3 kilometers away. But the air-to-air missile is still behind him, constantly pursuing. Little did they know, Jia Yan's series of dodges. It made Izo Komaki behind him seem to have seen the most surprising thing in the world. This air-to-air missile is nothing else. It is the -120 series of air-to-air missiles newly developed by the Stars and Stripes. The so-called fire and forget missile, its attack capabilities and tracking capabilities are extremely excellent among almost all air-to-air missiles. But this giant Mosquito actually relies on its own flexibility. Make air-to-air missiles spin around. You know, such a -120 missile costs more than 300,000 Stars and Stripes national dollars, and it is even more expensive to sell it to Japan. It is enough to build a small house in a remote city of Japan. And even though the missile was fired with gritted teeth, it still couldn't hit the big Mosquito. How powerful this big Mosquito's aerial melee combat ability must be. At this moment, Jia Yan, who was being chased by air-to-air missiles in the air, hurriedly saw the F-15J fighter jet flying slowly in the distance in the sky. Since you can't avoid it, let's detonate it. Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed with light. Then, his body shape changed and flew towards the F-15J. Die. When Izo Komaki saw the giant Mosquito monster being chased by air-to-air missiles, it seemed to be rushing toward him in a panic, and he immediately pressed the firing button of the aircraft cannon. He didn't have many bullets for his aerial cannon, but if he fired at this moment, if he could delay the speed of the big Mosquito and let the slightly sluggish air-to-air missiles behind him chase the big Mosquito, then he would have achieved his goal. He had never thought that the wisdom of the big Mosquito was not as simple as a mosquito at all. The aircraft cannon bullets roared loudly and were fired towards the large Mosquito approaching rapidly in the air. Bang 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 bang. But when Izo Komaki aimed, the big Mosquito was still in the center of the shooting target. When he pressed the fire control button, he saw that the big Mosquito in the center of the shooting target had already disappeared. Jia Yan is so flexible. At this time, the giant Mosquito was already sinking rapidly, and the air-to-air missiles behind it also completed the change of direction from the previous forward inertia. At a speed far exceeding Jia Yan's flying speed, he pursued him. The fighter jet above is also approaching extremely quickly. It's now. Suddenly, Jia Yanfu's eyes shined with unprecedented brilliance. Groan. His flapping wings, crazy incitement. The entire sinking trend suddenly stopped. And using inertia, it flew upward instead. He is so flexible. Incredibly flexible. The big Mosquito quickly raised its altitude and soared up. The air-to-air missile tracked below also flew in the same way, but its speed of changing direction was far slower than that of the Mosquito, so it lags behind. And after the big Mosquito changed, it flew directly over the nose of the F-15J fighter. Even Komaki Izo, who was piloting the fighter plane, could clearly see the Mosquito's compound eyes flashing faintly at this moment. Why is this Mosquito here, to pursue his missiles? At this moment, Komaki Izo just had this thought. Then, an incredible feeling of fear overwhelmed him. No, the missile is tracking him, so, not good. The squadron leader of the Defense Aviation Department of Central Japan did not have time to turn the plane around urgently. But already in despair, he felt a huge impact coming from underneath the car. Viewed from below. In the sky, the air-to-air missile chasing the giant Mosquito monster plunged into the huge body of the F-15J. In an instant, a violent fire broke out. Boom. Reborn as an interstellar giant Mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 169. Jia Yan's compound eyes were dim, staring at the huge fireball below. The F-15J was directly submerged in the firelight, and the huge air wave spread, shocking Jia Yan, who was 100 meters away, and retreated slightly. Then I saw the fighter plane in the air breaking into several pieces and then falling downwards. Wow! The ocean below was splashed by these fragments of fighter planes, causing waves as high as a person. During this period, Jia Yan saw an ejection device open, ejecting the pilot in the explosion, and then a parachute opened. However, the fighter plane was not very high from the sea, and the parachute basically did not play a role in reducing the speed. The man hit on the sea. You must know that if a person is in free fall, as long as he jumps into the water from a height of 30 meters, the hardness of the water surface will be due to the inertial force of the jump. The diving person will feel that it is almost as hard as a cement floor. And the place where the pilot jumped was more than 30 meters high. Therefore, even if this person does not die, he is still seriously injured. Jia Yan didn't care about this guy at all. He just stared at the broken bodies of the fighter with his compound eyes, and then the light in his eyes became even brighter. It's cool. Last time I just managed to destroy a little bit of the fighter planes on the Daewon side, and I had no backhand power. Now I can actually fight 2 Japanese fighter planes head-on, and make them all crash. My air combat strength has really improved a lot. Cut it off. Jia Yan felt happy in his heart, and then shouted in his heart that he was happy. At the same time, everything was quiet in the command center of the Japanese Komatsu Air Base. The air battle just now can actually be seen roughly on the surveillance radar here. That big Mosquito actually shot down 2 pilots from Komatsu Air Base. You must know that these 2 people are not only highly skilled pilots at Komatsu Air Base, but Izo Komaki is also a flying master with several actual combat experiences. It turns out that such a person can't deal with the giant mosquito monster. This. Standing behind the liaison officer was the senior officer of Komatsu Air Base, the highest officer in charge of the place, Susan Shoji. The flesh on his face was trembling rapidly. Then he jumped up as if experiencing a nightmare. Quick! Send out a rescue plane. In addition, urgently summon 20 pilots. All mount weapons and come over to hunt down this big mosquito. He was finally over after the battle. An order was issued. The entire aviation base suddenly became busy. 20 fighter jets taking off is not a small matter. This matter must be reported to many parties, even the military base of the Star-Spangled Banner in Japan must be reported. Otherwise, others would think that a flying combat group like you is going to bomb them. There is also the responsibility for destroying fighter planes in battle. As well as reports to the superiors, these things made the Susanoo of Komatsu base. I feel more stressed than ever before. This big mosquito is so difficult to deal with. If I had known better, I wouldn't have sent fighter planes to intercept him. It's really. This person felt extremely depressed. He thought he would be able to defeat the ground self-defense force by killing the mosquitoes, but he didn't expect that he would lose both his wife and his troops. It can be said that I came back covered in shit. It seems that this position of second general will not be occupied for a long time. Just as he thought of this, the liaison officer over there came closer with an ugly expression and said, "Just now, the Metropolitan Police hung up the phone and came over to ask why we didn't tell them in advance. Because we didn't evacuate the crowd in advance, the fighter plane crashed just now. In this small town, the casualties are very severe." He said he must file a complaint against us in Congress. Hearing this, the flesh on Susanooji's face trembled even more. He was slumped. Jia Yan had no idea that he had caused waves of turmoil among the Japanese high-level officials. Even if he knew, he would have ignored it. But for the dozens of fighter jets that rush to rescue next, they are a huge threat to it. But now the big mosquito, the first thing to think about is of course to implement the original idea. Rough waves crashed below. And the crashed F-15J was constantly rising and falling in the waves. It has been damaged, and its body is divided into several parts, but the main part is still on the largest piece of debris. Jia Yan looked at the plane, then his eyes flashed with light, and he flew directly downwards. Sizzle. Before he even got close to the wreckage of the plane, the condensation on his body was already making random noises like a human being's stomach that had been hungry for a long time. Then, Jia Yan stepped on the wreckage of the plane. Sizzle. The condensate seemed to have no time to enjoy its delicious meal, and hurriedly surged downwards. Then Jia Yan quietly felt that the condensate was like a porter, rapidly decomposing the metal of the fighter below, and then quickly dispersing the materials inside. Decompose it into the most primitive substances and transport it to your body. Then he started to feel a little itchy. Although it was still a little far from painful, it was definitely not a pleasant feeling. It turns out that my mutation process is like this. No wonder I felt severe pain when I mutated before. After all, this is a complete change in the body, and some biological essence must be changed. Jia Yan looked at the body that was rapidly enriching, and his compound eyes suddenly had a strange light. The magical condensation secreted in his body is increasing, layer after layer. These condensations rapidly decomposed the wreckage of the plane under his feet, and then carried it to his body, adding weight to Jia Yan's body. Since he swallowed the mysterious blue crystal last time, his body seemed to have been developed, and the cellular materials were waiting for material to be enriched, so he really didn't feel much pain this time. At least compared to before, Jia Yan could be calmer. Watch your own mutation process. Jia Yan discovered that the condensate tissue secreted by his body did not only swallow metal. Although metal was the main force, other substances on the plane would also be selectively enriched into the body. What surprised him most was that these condensates even absorbed seawater. The seawater under his feet passed through a road composed of condensate and was absorbed into his body. Then Jia Yan's body was like a rising balloon, inflating rapidly. Seawater, metal, and other substances on some fighter planes, through the mysterious decomposition and reorganization process of clots, transformed Jia Yan's body into the next mutation. Soon, Jia Yan's body seemed to be wrapped in a sticky thing. This thing is a clot tissue in a semi-solidified state. The compound eyes of the big mosquito were also submerged to an unknown depth by the clot. Jia Yan could only feel that his devouring action had ended. That's changing now. It's the internal organs in his body, etc. This feeling. It seems like the internal organs in the body are dissolving. Jia Yan finally felt pain. The first thing he felt was that some parts of his body were rapidly decomposing. Naturally, this process will not be very comfortable, and it is also in the process of decomposition. It seems that his body will also create some simple replacement organs, including decomposed internal organs and other organs. Make a temporary replacement to ensure that body functions will not be greatly affected. What is the principle of this? There shouldn't be a machine in my body controlling these changes, right? Jia Yan was trembling slightly. What a horrible thought. In the previous mutations, it was okay to survive the pain, but this time the level of pain has dropped a bit. He thinks a lot. Just because he felt the process of body changes, Jia Yan suddenly became fascinated by the magic of the series of things changing in his body. Got some fear. Everything is so perfect, as if there is really some kind of intelligent mutation process. What do you think of this process? It's not like something that would appear normally. So what's going on? Is there really something out there that is controlling all of this? Can even the mutation process be controlled? Impossible. Jia Yan immediately pushed this weird idea out of his mind. His mutation has too much unpredictability and too many irregular factors. Just like the first mutation, there was nothing else around him except the train car, and all he swallowed was the purple liquid. Then there was the black liquid, the mysterious juice, and now the azure crystal and azure semi-solid. The scenes where these things appeared were different, the substances swallowed and sucked were different, and even the state of the body was different. Jia Yan thought for a long time and finally thought of a possibility. That is, the self-evolution of living things. I remember that I have read some books and news before, and they all said that insects are the creatures with the strongest evolutionary ability, and they are also the creatures that are most compatible with evolutionary receptors. The most typical example is that there was a news program that said it was a factory nearby. Due to the pollution of the entire environment, the surrounding trees were polluted black. A kind of insect that relied on that kind of tree to survive. The original protective color was green, but because the trees were polluted black, in just a few years, their descendants evolved into there are no black species like them in the entire earth, which shows how powerful the evolutionary capabilities of insects are. As for me, it should be because I have wisdom. After swallowing these medicinal liquids that promote mutation, I can and secretly follow my own biological instincts to achieve a rapid evolution. Yes. Everything is the super-evolutionary instinct of insects. The most typical one is the time I swallowed the black liquid. Because I was constantly hit, the mutation process that should have increased my body was interrupted and turned into a strengthened defense. Even after that, I was able to defend myself against bullets. Got it? The more Jia Yan analyzed, the more he got a true image that he could accept. In fact, this was the only reason that could explain why he randomly carried out mutations and got good results every time. As for other bugs and insects, because they have no intelligence, their instinctive desire for biological evolution is far lower than mine, which prevents them from surviving mutations. Even if some get the first mutation due to luck or special reasons, but it's impossible to start a second mutation. To be continued, I forgot to update, so I will post both chapters together. Thank you all for your subscriptions and tips, thank you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 170. The more Jia Yan thought about it, the more he got the real answer. The compound eye organ, which was deep in the condensate and was rapidly decomposing, had a faint luster and was extremely bright. And at this moment, fighter jets streaked across the sky from the blue sky and came speeding towards us. However, the wreckage of the fighter planes that had been floating on the sea had already gradually sunk. Just when Jia Yan started to undergo crazy mutations, these wreckage sank directly and entered the underwater things that the fighter planes above could not see with the naked eye. There's a parachute over there. Send a flare to the rescue team below. Damn it, but you still haven't found that big mosquito. 20 fighter jets, all of the same F-15J model, were launched, but no prey was found. The leader of this group of fighter jets, a Japanese Air Self-Defense Force squadron leader with the same rank as Komaki Izo, a man named Komatsuki, had a very expression on his face. Ugly. Captain, it is said that the giant mosquito monster sometimes flies at a very low altitude. Should we ask the headquarters to lower the radar recognition signal? Maybe we can track his signal. Idiot, lower the signal. The error tolerance is too large. It is impossible to find him correctly. Let's spread out and search. Don't be impulsive if you find him. Keep your distance first and then contact everyone. Don't be reckless. This can defeat 2 fighters. Monster, do you understand? Yes. The battle group composed of 20 fighters immediately dispersed, forming a huge search network in the nearby sea area. Such a large-scale fighter group is simply a rare big move by Japan. In order to explain this move, not only the Komatsu Air Base has been under tremendous pressure, but even the top brass of the self-defense forces have also been under pressure from many aspects. Among these pressures, the greatest naturally, it comes from the Star-Spangled Banner country. As the Stars and Stripes nation that built a base in Japan and protected Japan, they naturally couldn't see how Japan dared to cause such a large-scale military operation. They originally thought that Japan would come up with some understandable explanation, but when they learned that Japan's excuse, it's actually because of some monster mosquito, suddenly he became even more angry. What about the giant mosquito monster? Although the Stars and Stripes army knew a little bit about this matter, but now they actually sent a fighter group to deal with that mosquito. The Star-Spangled Banner country will never believe this. That monster was just a monster with a wingspan of about 2 meters. Is it worth the Japanese war? It must be that the Japanese country has recently seen that the Star-Spangled Banner country has relaxed a little bit about their military operations, so they have taken advantage of it. This has to be hammered. So in the military base of the Star-Spangled Banner, nearly 20 fighter planes were immediately dispatched to take off against the Japanese fighter planes. As two armies that often cooperate in exercises, the two sides are of course very familiar with each other. Maybe some of them have a relationship where they often sit and drink together. But this time, both sides have to act as an expulsion. Another anti-deportation character. The Star-Spangled Banner's intervention in the Air Self-Defense Force suddenly made the already chaotic situation even more chaotic. And that's how confusing it is. It's actually not as good as the chaos on another battlefield. That's the battlefield on Mount Fuji. At this time, he is in front of the cameras of various TV stations in Japan, as well as the world's media. Those metal monsters. A crazy killing of humans is underway. They chased humans one by one, either with metal feet or with red light that was as powerful as a cannonball. Directly kill a large number of Japanese people. Boom boom boom. Countless red rays of light are spraying towards the outside world. This is Fuji TV. Maybe you have heard that the most beautiful sacred mountain in our country, Mount Fuji, actually erupted today. However, the impact of the eruption is not just the damage caused by the volcanic eruption, but also the mysterious things in front of everyone. The monsters seem to be summoned from hell. Everyone, please look, this is the scene where they are wreaking havoc. These monsters are not afraid of bullets, or even small bombs. Their number reaches dozens, no. The latest intelligence shows that their number has exceeded 100. These monsters seem to be sprayed out with the magma, and they are invulnerable. Even the police and the self-defense forces can't do anything about them for the time being. The serious expression of the live female anchor was displayed in front of the audience along with the scenes. Even now, these media still do not regard this incident as a major event that threatens the entire country. And just as the female anchor continued to live broadcast, suddenly a strong red light appeared in front of the camera. The audience watched as this red light appeared. Afterwards, a loud boom explosion appeared in the TV footage. The lens was affected by a strong explosion, and even the photographer carrying it was thrown upside down, and the picture turned into a sky scene. Outside the screen, there were the screams of the host and guests in the anchor hall. In this sudden mutation scene, the TV station actually forgot to switch to other screens and continued the live broadcast. Maybe the staff in the TV station were frightened. However, when the cameras shook, the photographer struggled to get up from the ground. Pulling the camera to the scene of the explosion, the cameraman's screams and the screams of the surrounding staff suddenly came into view. The female anchor who was still standing in the same place for live broadcast just now had only half her body left. A pair of beautiful legs seemed to be vaguely able to move on the ground, but the upper half of her body had completely disappeared. Flesh and blood splattered all over the road, painting everything in a scene that looked like an apocalypse. Not only the on-site staff during the live broadcast were extremely frightened, but even the audience in front of the TV were frightened when they saw this scene. Some children watching the show were so frightened that they cried, the old people were so frightened that they went crazy, and even the young people were so frightened by the bloody scene that they fell off their chairs and trembled all over. The beautiful anchor woman who was known to almost everyone in the Japanese country has now turned into such a tragic situation, which further highlights the cruelty of the Mount Fuji battlefield. Moreover, even the live broadcast personnel of the TV station who should be relatively safe were attacked by stray bullets in full view of the public. How dangerous Mount Fuji must be at this time. At this time, the entire Japanese country was shocked. But no matter how shocking, those metal monsters in the crater of Mount Fuji. It is still pouring out continuously. I don't know when the end will be. Except for the parties involved. No one knew that the source of all this was the giant mosquito monster. At this time, This giant mosquito, which was regarded as nothing special from other monsters, was found silently under the search of a large group of fighter planes. Jia Yan was indeed silent. Because he is mutating at this time. Even because of the sinking of the fighter plane, the entire mutated liquid body was completely immersed in the deep sea. His mutation this time. Because there is no oxygen environment in the depths and the cold water on the seabed will cause even more wonderful changes. Of course Jia Yan now. He himself didn't know this either. Everything follows the main meaning of evolution. That is, survival. In order to survive, the power of mutation will turn him into a mosquito. Become stronger and more adaptable to the environment. Hundreds of meters deep under the sea. This is a place where the pressure of the sea water is extremely high, and the claw tissue that gradually changes color is affected by the pressure of the deep sea water. Compressed. In the clot, the thick black color is mixed with a faint azure color. A little bit of undulating tubular blood was beating slightly at this time. In the deep and dark seabed, this huge piece of clotted tissue is like a dead thing, drifting with the current. Jia Yan was asleep inside. In seawater, there is no oxygen at all, but the big mosquito in the clot still survives well. This is the wonder of the power of mutation, and it is also a manifestation of the powerful vitality of the insect race. As the clot floated, a huge underwater creature quickly broke through the deep water and approached this biological organization that exuded the smell of flesh and blood. It's a shark. Its scientific name is Hexabranchia. Its adult body is generally more than 3 meters long, and the larger ones can reach 4 meters. And this 6-gill shark, with a body length of about 3.5 meters, can be regarded as the absolute king of predators in the deep sea. Smelling the scent of the creature, the 6-gill shark swam quickly and came to what seemed like a lump of strange material in the deep sea. This piece of tissue is 5 to 6 meters in size. It seems to be a cocoon as a whole, but its color is pitch black with silky blue, which is definitely not something that exists in the deep sea. The 6-gill shark swam twice next to the huge substance. To the giant shark's perception, the object seemed to be a living thing, but it seemed not to be. However, the faint bloody smell in the sea water kept teasing the shark's sensitive sense of smell, making him endure it. I can't help but want to gorge myself. Finally, this big shark couldn't stand it anymore. He opened his big mouth and bit down on the edge of the huge thing. Click. But the bitten part made a crisp sound. A strange color appeared in the shark's fierce eyes. This material is actually extremely hard, especially the blue thing, which is as hard to bite as the nearby rocks. But underneath the material, it must be flesh and blood. The simple wisdom of the shark allows him to not give up easily when he sets a target. This 6-gill shark constantly attacks the huge material in front of him. Take one bite at a time. He even uses his body to collide with matter. What's more, it slaps its huge tail on the surface of this material. However, all this has no effect. Finally, the 6-gill shark order was angry. The ferocity in his bones caused him to gather all his strength, open his big mouth, and bite hard at the edge of this huge material. Then he didn't let go at all and the body swayed rapidly and began to bite. The water was splashing wildly, and the entire deep sea seemed to be mudded by this big shark. Wow! The water bubbles kept rolling up, which seemed to be a victory march played for the shark, making this violent shark even more violent. It bit more excitedly. The power used is also greater. Click. Finally, a crisp cracking sound sounded in the water. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 171. Sound can travel in water, but if you want to make a clear sound in the water, the sound must be very loud. The shark bit the mysterious substance and actually made a sound. But upon closer inspection, there was a look of panic in the eyes of this 6-gill shark after it made a sound of biting. If you look carefully, you will find that the mysterious huge substance is not damaged at all. But what exactly is causing the cracking sound? The answer is revealed. If you look carefully in the sea water, you can see that there are several teeth that are gradually sinking, and these teeth are still stained with blood. It turns out that what broke was not the shell of the mysterious substance, but the teeth of the six-gill shark that bit the substance. You must know that the bite power of sharks is not ordinary and terrifying. Sometimes they can bite through steel. But now he couldn't bite the shell of the mysterious substance, and even his teeth were broken directly. This shows how terrifyingly hard this mysterious material is. Finally, the huge shark gave up on dealing with the mysterious substance in front of him. Although the substance looked like flesh and blood, it was too hard. The shark found that even its own teeth could not tear it apart, and even the teeth were damaged. Although these teeth could vary, it will grow back soon, but this six-gill shark doesn't want its teeth to continue to be missing, otherwise it will affect its ability to hunt in the future. So he chose to give up. To make sharks who smell the fishy smell give up, you can see how hard this mysterious substance is. The figure of the huge shark flipped gently in the sea water, then swayed its tail, gradually swam far away, and then finally disappeared. Only this mysterious 5 to 6 meter biological tissue is left, lying quietly on the bottom of the sea, gradually floating in the sea. After the big shark left, no living thing would be curious about this mysterious biological organization. Except for some small fish, they would use this place as their own shelter and hide next to the huge organization. Other times, this piece of tissue just sunk alone on the bottom of the sea, like a dead thing. The battle at Mount Fuji in Japan, and the battle between the Japan Air Self-Defense Force and the giant mosquito monster, were two horrific events. Almost within a day, the whole world was shaken again. Compared to the previous incident which resulted in many casualties. Although the battle between the latter fighter plane and the giant mosquito was no less intense than the former, the impact it caused was not as intense as the former. Had it not been for the crash of a small town in the center of the country, as it caused damage to several private houses and the casualties of more than 20 people, the Japanese military might completely conceal this matter. After all, such a shameful thing. Which country's military is willing to release it? As the news was unblocked, some videos were also posted online by people near the scene. After all, giant mosquitoes and fighter planes are fighting in the sky. Although it doesn't seem like a long time, the span and the sound are not small at all. It can be seen in several videos that there are three things, one big and one small, fighting in the air. The speed has reached a terrifying level. In some videos, only three faint shadows can be seen, and then the things in the low-altitude battle chase each other one after another. It doesn't matter if the fighter plane reaches such a fast speed, but that giant mosquito monster can actually reach such a terrifying speed. This simply violates biology. As for those military enthusiasts, they regard the video as their supreme treasure. You know, since the birth of the Star-Spangled Banner's F-15J fighter, it has participated in many wars, large and small, and the number of enemy aircraft shot down has been counted in the hundreds, but it has never been shot down. This time, there were actually two of them. They were not shot down by human fighter planes and artillery shells, but were killed by a big mosquito. This was an inexplicable joy, especially for those cyber military enthusiasts of Tsarist Russia and the cyber military of China. Enthusiasts, all laughed loudly. You have the nerve to say that this F-15J is a mature fourth-generation fighter, but now it can't even deal with a big mosquito. It's simply ridiculous. Netizens who support the F-15J naturally sarcastically say that it was the powerful mosquito monster that brought down the fighter plane, and it was not your country's fighter plane that did it down. What does it matter to you? As a result, the two sides started a war of words again. Of course, this kind of thing is naturally very boring. There is no final outcome or winner. Only those higher-level military professionals can see the two Japanese fighters based on this series of relevant data and video evidence. The pilots are not easy to deal with, but they are all under the so-called Mosquito monster, without any resistance. What does this mean? It means that this kind of monster is actually capable of fighting against the ultimate weapon of mankind. Is there really going to be creatures that can fight against humans in this Earth world? And this kind of monster is not one, nor is it a race, but a group. The mosquito monster that first appeared is still not sure whether it is a race or just one, because the giant mosquitoes have been sighted several times in China, Taiwan, and Japan. They are not creatures of the same size, although they all look very similar. Some scholars even assert that this is the same creature, but more people are willing to believe that this is a new race, the mosquito tribe. Of course, this name is a name given to a few giant mosquitoes by internet users, but this name is gradually accepted by many people, especially those who believe in catastrophism. They insist that the mosquito tribe will attack humans in the future. Flying troops in the Monster Alliance attack humans. It sounds ridiculous, but isn't the fact already before our eyes? Mount Fuji front, emergency. That's right. This is an event that attracts the attention of the world more than the battle between giant mosquitoes and fighter planes. Poor Japanese people, since the eruption of Mount Fuji, the casualties have been expanding rapidly. It is not only the harm caused by the eruption of Mount Fuji, but more dangers come from those terrible metal monsters. Compared with this metal monster, the damage caused by the eruption of Mount Fuji. No one is paying attention anymore. The highest peak in the small land of Japan, Mount Fuji, is still blazing, and the magma that erupts from time to time is like a cannonball, splashing in all directions. But what is even more frightening is that with the eruption of Mount Fuji, there are also those metal monsters crawling out of the flames one after another. Just like the man-eating monster from hell. The Japanese ground self-defense force has completely taken over the war between the police and the metal monsters. Yes, this can already be called a war. Although it only lasted a short day, these metal monster armies jumped out of the volcano one by one. It is estimated that the number has reached more than 2,000. The most terrifying thing is that these monsters also seem to have certain tactical wisdom. They advance towards human towns in small groups. Almost every one of these monsters is invulnerable. Only powerful weapons can pose a threat to them. Even at the wrong angle, grenades and the like can't really kill or injure them. Corresponding to these defenses, they also have very terrifying attack power. That is the slender metal tube that appears on the head of every metal monster. This metal tube seems to be a gun barrel. The red light emitted from it is almost as powerful as a powerful human bomb, and even as powerful as a cannonball. A house exploded at the drop of a hat. In terms of firepower, 5 metal monsters were able to suppress a self-defense force team of 30 people. The ground self-defense force, which was already at a numerical disadvantage, continued to retreat to the rear. When the first wave of 1,500 soldiers of the ground self-defense force were completely unable to resist these metal monsters, a signal was sent out. Reinforcements. Japan's heavily armed army of 1,500 people continues to request reinforcements. This time, it was really shaking up and down. It is beyond anyone else's imagination to see how powerful a fully organized human army can be. Besides, the Japanese ground self-defense force has always had good equipment. Such an army of 1,500 people can actually fight for less than a day. When it arrives, it's time to request reinforcements from the outside world. Who is this metal monster? No one knew that Japan had encountered a similar metal monster at the Institute of Fetish Objects as early as 20 years ago. It even caused many casualties at that time. And the creatures that caused death and injury at that time were just 2 metal monsters. The senior Japanese officials who have encountered metal monsters are fully aware of the true combat power of these monsters. However, the two metal monster bodies captured 20 years ago still have many mysteries that cannot be solved by the Japanese scientific community. But unexpectedly, before the Japanese scientific community revealed the secrets of the metal monsters, these monsters would actually appear again after 20 years, and this time they would appear on such a large scale. Boom boom boom. The metal monster emits red light, wiping out houses, humans, and any creature it sees. Where are the reinforcements? They haven't come yet? These monsters are not something we can resist. In the temporary command post of the Ground Self-Defense Force, Honda Shogun, almost a major general, who has the title of Wise Man of the Japanese Self-Defense Force, was spitting wildly at the other end of the phone. After hanging up the phone, Honda held his head helplessly and sat on a chair. This temporary command post was an emergency sign. A family was escaping from another house. At this time, Honda was sitting at the dining table where the family was eating. His face was full of helplessness. This general with the title of Wise Man really had no choice at this time. His war techniques were all directed against humans and only after understanding the opponent's shortcomings and firepower ratio. But facing more and more weird monsters, he has absolutely no choice. We will make up for it. Unfortunately, the second line of defense in front has also been breached, with more than 100 casualties. We'd better retreat quickly. We really can't defend here. Suddenly an adjutant rushed into the house and conveyed the military situation of the crisis to General Honda. Withdraw, Honda smiled bitterly and rubbed his temples. Jinchi, you probably don't know what will happen if we retreat, right?